Thanks for coming back with another one. If you're new to the channel, that subscribe button. If you're a returning viewer, as I always say, I appreciate you for checking the content out. This one is going to be on the why the Moorish nationality or national identity, how Herskovits, Hrdlicka, and Pecker erased the indigenous identity. It's presented by Konos and Kofa Bay. We're going to talk about the displacement, unmasking, colonial identity stripping. So, as I always say, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. If you're a returner, thank you. And so without holding y'all, we're going to jump straight into it. Peace and love, family.
On behalf of Akuno and Kofa Bay, you know what I'm saying? Jay, where you at? We're trying to help our people elevate. Hope. H-O-P-E. We're giving them hope. We doing what we got to do, you know? Every day, one step at a time, man. We're going to make it happen. Helping our people elevate. Yeah. Sometimes I practice focus, thought, and meditate. I'm trying to come with other ways to help our people elevate. And seeking knowledge make me levitate. The lifted mental state is what results from how we orchestrate. This for the family's sake. Let's self-reflect and self-evaluate. And every day make sure the steps you take, you calculate. Receive a master's fate. I know I can't exist without the hate, but that's okay. I balance that with higher self today. Success is on this way, and after that my flesh can pass away.
So first I want to get into what is nationality or what is nations and their nationalities. And so according to the Black's Law Dictionary, nationality is the quality of character which arises from the fact of a person belonging to a nation or a state. And so if you've been following the platform, you understand that black and white are not nations or nationalities. If you've been following the platform, you understand that color, according to law, means artificial, distinguished from that which is real. It is a deceptive appearance. And so when we're dealing with nations and nationalities, we look at the nations on the left and we look at their nationalities on the right. And each nation has its own flag, a constitution, they have treaties, they have their food, they have a culture, they have a dress attire. Like I said, they have a language, they have all these things. And so black and white do not have these things. These are social statuses. These are social constructs made up. As I said, if you've been following my platform, the fathers of the modern race paradigm. So this whole black and white comes from Francis Bernard, Carlos Linnaeus, Johann Friedrich Blumenbach. So then we ask, why the Moorish nationality or national identity? One, because it gives us the most leverage. Two, because it ties us back to the land. And three, because it makes us, we be the landlords of our own estate. So if it ties us back to the land, that makes us the landowners of this soil that we stand on. So again, why the nationality identity? Why national identity? Because like I said, when you deal with nations and nationalities, they have treaties, constitutions, a language, a culture, all these things that come with their land and their history of who they are. We're going to talk about nationality and citizenship and its legal and political rights. So when you look at citizenship, it refers to the legal status of an individual as a member of a specific nation state. Citizens have specific rights and obligations, such as the right to vote, work, and reside in the country, as well as the duty to obey the laws and possibly serve in the military. So pretty much as a citizen, these are things that they say are their rights, but they can force you to join the military if they wanted to. We see them on a regular basis. Wait till you see the video I got coming after this, but we see them on a regular basis falsely convicting people for wrongful crimes. And so this is what comes with being a citizen in the United States. Your rights are really taken. But when it comes to nationality, it refers to your legal relationship between an individual and a nation, which may or may not include citizenship. Nationality is often considered a broader concept encompassing a person's identity, culture, affiliation, and connection to a nation. And so again, we just looked at the maps of the different nations and their nationalities. And I just told you their history, their culture, their language, their food. They have a way of existence. They have a history that's ancient, indigenous to where they are. So the leverage of nationality can sometimes provide a broader sense of belonging to an identity that transcends legal definitions. It can influence diplomatic protection, cultural rights, and access to certain international benefits that are not strictly tied to citizenship. For instance, someone with a particular nationality might receive preferential treatment in visa applications or access to certain rights in another country due to historical and cultural ties. So again, treaties, different cultures or different nationalities having a history amongst each other, different nations having peace amongst each other, so they can go other places and be treated as such, as allies or as friendlies, because they belong to a nation and they have nations that protects them. If a person of Chinese descent was attacked by French police, then the Chinese nation would stand up against the French to seek justice for that Chinese one person. But when so-called blacks are harmed or killed in America on the masses, all they do is protest and riot. They don't have a nation to back them up. They don't have legal protection. They don't have legal or international ties, international treaties, they don't have any protection at all. Like I said, the word color, according to law, means artificial, distinguished from that which is real. So we're talking about cultural and social identity. Nationality ties individuals to a shared culture, language, and heritage. This can offer leverage in situations where cultural identity plays a crucial role, such as in negotiations, international relations, or even business dealing with shared cultural understandings and advantages. Whereas citizenship, while it grants legal rights, it doesn't necessarily connect an individual to a particular culture or heritage, especially in countries with diverse populations. Boom. So the United States of America has a lot of diverse populations. And so this does not connect, citizenship does not connect you to your heritage, your ancestry, pedigree, lineage, what we'll get into here a little bit later, or either on my next video I'm gonna put out. I think it'll be on my next video I'm gonna put out about consanguinity. And so the leverage of nationality can provide a sense of belonging and identity that can be leveraged in contexts where cultural affinity or shared heritage is important. For example, dual nationals might be able to navigate and influence both cultures more effectively. Then we talk about diplomatic protection. And see, again, black and white do not have these diplomatic protection. As one of my teachers, Brother King L. Bay, says, when it comes to the statuses of black and white, Europeans suffer the same problems that we do here in the U.S. Only difference is they would be considered the house Negroes. But if that went over your head, rewind it back and just think about it. Now, nationality under international law, nationality is the basis for diplomatic protection. If a national faces issues abroad, their country of nationality can intervene on their behalf. As the example I just gave about China and France. And so citizenship, while also important, diplomatic protection is more closely tied to nationality. Diplomatic protection is more closely tied to nationality. In some cases, a person might hold citizenship in one country, but have nationality in another, and their protection might hinge on their nationality. So that's the same thing. As I just said, black and white are not nationalities, and so the only difference is one is the house Negro and one is the field Negro. They're still the same. They have no diplomatic protection. So the leverage of nationality and diplomatic protection is that nationality can sometimes offer broader or more favorable diplomatic protection, especially in the regions where nationality plays a key role in international relations, dealing with international law. And so our massive ignorance is the source of European power, which fuels our political disunity, operating the knowledge in a political structure. It is our massive ignorance in the source of European power, which fuels the political disunity, operating the knowledge in a political structure. So that means we must come together, we must understand law, we must understand language. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. So if we don't know what's going on, then we're not going to hear, we're not going to see it. They're not going to speak on what's going on. So it's on us to understand what's going on. The manipulation of reality is the manipulation of words. Those who control the words control those who use them. And so this here is a chart or images of different melanated women from different areas from back then and now, showing you that these indigenous people or melanated people, so-called Black people, have been around the entire planet for ancient times. So we're looking at Australia, Asia, London, Nigeria, France, Japan, and the Americas. Now, I want to dive into it. We're going to talk about the cultural ancestry identity. Who changed the identity of the indigenous people? I'm going to go back because, like I said, this is Australia, Asia, London, Nigeria, France, Japan, and the Americas. And so, as we see on YouTube or television today, you hear these various people saying that all these people came from one spot. All these people came from ancient Africa. Well, who is it that came with this theory? We're going to talk about Melville Herskovits. Melville Herskovits created the genocidal lie of Moors, so-called American Negroes coming from African slaves only, changing their cultural identity. And so Melville Herskovits, and these are 3 of his books, but this is the man who came with the concept that we came from slave ships and that slavery was our only history. Herskovits was the first prominent Caucasian to declare that Black culture in America was not pathological, but rather inherently African, and that it had to be viewed within that context. And so he was also recognized as the father of African studies in schools. And the books that we see here, The Human Factor in Changing Africa, The Myth of the Negro Past, and Man and His Works, we're going to just give you a few examples of what these books detailed or what they talked about in these books. Starting with The Myth of the Negro Past is a seminal work of anthropologist Melville Herskovits published in 1941. In this book, Herskovits challenged the prevailing belief that Moors in the Americas had been culturally blank state upon the arrivals in the Americas as slaves, arguing instead that they retained significant elements of their African cultural heritage. He conducted extensive research on African culture and the cultural practices of Moors in the Americas, demonstrating the continuity of African culture, traditions, and in the New World. Herskovits' work played a crucial role in shifting the academic discourse on Moor Americans' culture and identity, emphasizing the importance of understanding the African roots of Moor American cultural practices. And so again, in this book is basically him saying that he connected the African culture to the Moors, which is cool because the Moors did exist in Africa, but him saying that they had a blank slate upon arrival in the Americas as slaves is false, because the Moors were already in the Americas before Columbus, before Herskovits even existed. And so we're going to just keep going into it. This is the social engineering that was done by the Europeans to create this false narrative, though, about our ancestors' history or who we are and where we come from. So in his book, The Human Factors in Changing Africa in 1962, it is a significant work in the field of African studies and anthropology. In this book, Herskovits explores the social, cultural, and economic changes occurring in Africa during the mid-20th century, a period marked by rapid decolonization and modernization. So showing you that he pretty much added on or wrote about the change during the decolonization and modernization. So them changing and making it to be what it is today. Franz Boas and Melville Herskovits, the anthropologists who created the field of African American studies and African studies in today's universities and institutions. They were the teachers of W.E. Du Bois, Zora Neale Hurston, among many others. Not only does the Black American out of Africa concepts come from a white eugenics, Charles Darwin, but Black American historical connections to the landmass presently known as Africa is based upon 2 Jews for the sole purpose of suppressing records of the so-called Black Americans' origins and indigenous history in the Americas, which academic institutions created by white supremacy. So showing you that, and like I said, don't take my word for it. Do your own research if you want to disagree, if you don't believe. I don't want you to believe. Do your own research so you'll know, because knowing is better than believing. But Melville Herskovits, with the help of Franz Boas, are the 2 Jews or so-called Jews who came with the race paradigm as far as saying that so-called Black Americans came to the Americas as slaves. Franz Boas, often regarded as the father of American anthropology, made a significant contribution to the field. Here are some of his notable books. You Had the Mind of Primitive Man in 1911. This book challenges racial stereotypes and argues against the idea that intelligence and culture are biologically determined. Boas emphasized cultural relativism suggesting that each culture must be understood on its own terms. Anthropology and Modern Life, 1928, Boas discussed how anthropology can contribute to solving modern social problems, focusing on the relationship between race, culture, and personalities. Primitive Art, 1927, in his book, Boas explores the artistic expression of various indigenous cultures, analyzing their forms, styles, and functions within their societies. And so the question should be, why were these Europeans in such urge to study the indigenous people? Why did they want to know so much about the indigenous culture? And then as we get into school systems today, or when I was coming up, everything about the indigenous people that was played on TV, Looney Tunes, any type of cartoon, any type of TV show was always poverty. They were poor. They were always in some type of bad shape, something negative at all times. Why is that the only thing they always show? But these people love studying and the reconstruction. So let's get into Walter Plecker, the benefits. How did the indigenous people, or how did our ancestors lose their benefits to the land? Not just the land rushes, not just the massive bombings, rapings, slaughterings, murders, but the pen is mightier than the sword. And so Walter Plecker, the eugenist who took away the Moor/American Negro Indians' benefits and gave them to the Europeans, the so-called whites. The eugenists who took away the Moor/American Negro Indian resources and gave them to the descendants of European settlers of various nationalities, Indians, Irish, French, British, Italian, etc., German. I can continue going, but these are his documentations that he pledged, and we'll go a little bit further into them. But Walter Plecker was a prominent figure in the United States who served as the first registrar of Virginia's Bureau of Vital Statistics, a position he held from 1912 to 1946. So that was what, 34 years that he held that position? Plecker was a staunch advocate of eugenics and racial purity, and he implemented policies aimed at enforcing racial segregation and preventing interracial marriages. These are the people that they put in power. One of Plecker's controversial actions of his efforts to reclassify individuals of Native American and Mexican descent as colored or Negroes in official records. He believed in a strict binary racial classification system, and he sought to eradicate any acknowledgement of Native Americans or Mexican ancestry among individuals he considered white. Plecker's actions were a part of a broader movement in the United States during the early 20th century to enforce racial purity and uphold white supremacy. Plecker's policies had devastating consequences for Native Americans and Mexican communities, as they were denied access to resources and rights afforded to white citizens. His actions also contributed to the erasure of Native American and Mexican identities and history, perpetuating a legacy of discrimination and marginalization. Plecker's strict definition of whiteness and blackness led to a mass erasure of Virginia's Indian identity. As a result of his efforts, Virginia's Indians often have difficulty in proving an unbroken lineage, one of many requirements to become a federal recognized tribe. And so the images I have up here, just to show y'all, like I said, these are the people who stripped us from our identity, our resources, and our land. You see the image on the left, this is an ancient image of the Mayan mural. As I say in all the videos, when I pull up any type of ancient artifacts, I always say, you see the different colors in the image. And so they had different colors of paint. They had different colors of paint during that time frame. So if they had different colors of paint during that time frame, look at the skin tone. And the image on the right is today's modern Mayan civilization, or today's modern Mayan people. And so these are the people that they recognize as Mayan today. These would be the people who claim to be the indigenous people of today when they don't look like the people on the left. And so this is the social engineering that I'm talking about. This is the conquest, colonization that what we talk about. Alex Hrdlicka, the man who changed the image. Alex Hrdlicka changed the picture of the Moors, so-called Indians, from dark-skinned images to pale, as reflected in the evidence throughout Europe, from so-called Negro Indians to Mongol Asians. So again, the so-called natives of today would be the East Asians that are claiming to be Native Americans, claiming the indigenous history. How did this happen? Alex Hrdlicka, the eugenist who changed the picture of the Moors from dark-skinned images to pale, as reflected as evidence throughout Europe, from a so-called Negro Indian to Mongol Asians. And these are three of his books that he published. Alex Hrdlicka was a shares American anthropologist known for his works in physical anthropology and human evolution. In the early 20th century, Hrdlicka conducted research on indigenous peoples of the Americas, particularly focusing on their physical characteristics and origins. One of Hrdlicka's theories, influenced by prevailing racial theories of its time, was that the indigenous peoples of the Americas, including Native Americans, were descendants from Asian population. He believed that they migrated to the Americas from Asia via a land bridge that once connected Siberia to Alaska during the last ice age. Hrdlicka's theory challenged early ideas that some indigenous people of the Americas, particularly those with darker skin and African features, were of African descent. By proposing an Asian origin for Native Americans, he contributed to shaping their understanding of the peoples of the Americas among anthropologists and scholars. Again, this is the man who changed the image from the darker images that we see of the natives or the indigenous people to the modern day people claiming to be that. However, it's essential to note that Hrdlicka's theories were influenced by the racial ideologies prevalent during his time, and they have been critiqued and revised as our understanding of human migration and genetics have advanced. Today, the prevailing scientific consensus is that the indigenous peoples of the Americas are descendants from the ancient Asian population, but have a diverse and cultural background shaped by a millennium of migration, adaptation, and interaction. There are multiple connections between Asian Americans and Native Americans, including genetic ancestry, migration, and cultural similarities. Let's dive into a few. Their genetic ancestry. Genetic analysis of Native Americans suggests that they have ancestry from both East Asian and Siberia. Some say that Native Americans are primarily of East Asian descent, with a smaller contribution from Western Eurasian populations. Others that have Native American are descended from a mixture of East Asians lineage and ancient North Eurasian population. The oldest genetic link between Asians and Native Americans was founded in Siberia, where a 14,000-year-old human tooth revealed a DNA link between peoples who lived there and early American settlers. By the term Caucasian, Caucasus Mountains, and Asian, Eurasians. This is Caucasian. This is the mixture. The migration. Some believe that the first Native Americans came to the Americas from Asia through the Bering Land Bridge between 30,000 and 12,000 years ago. However, others suggest that there may have been two ancient migrations between the Americas, China, and Japan along Asia's Pacific coast rather than through the Bering Land Bridge. Then they have the cultural similarities. Some say that conclusions about the connection between Asians and Native Americans are based on cultural, morphological, and genetic similarities between Americans and Asian populations. Overall, the ancestral Native Americans descended from the admixture of an ancient East Asian lineage, contributing between 56 to 68% ancestry, and a Paleolithic Siberian population known as ancient North Eurasian, contributing around 32 to 44% ancestry. So are Native Americans really East Asians? And on that note, like I said, Walter Pecker, Alex Hrdlicka, Franz Boas, and Melville Herskovits. These are more of this race paradigm of the lies that have been taught to our people, the reconstruction, why is it called reconstruction? What was the Great Depression about? You got to question all these things, my people. And on that note, I want to say I'm out of here. Peace and love. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, add on, let me know what you think.